Hey David, how you doing?
I'm doing great.
Fantastic. It's a pleasure to get to speak with you today. You having a good Wednesday so far?
Yes, until you came on.
Well, great. Let's see if I can change that then.
Okay, jeez, this is so annoying.
I know, right? Imagine how I feel. I'm
I
having
know,
to
right? Okay, somehow we're gonna get through this.
I'm having to live with this each and every day, much less my wife and kids, David. I mean, they tell me about it all the time how annoyed they are by me.
That's nice that you have a wife and kids.
Well, for
That's
now.
that's progress already. I have a wonderful two kids and a wonderful ex-wife, and I'm very happy.
How old are the two kids?
Uh, my son is 25
Okay.
and my daughter's 23.
Okay, so you're completely out of the woods now. Congratulations on that.
I am. I think it gets better and better. I love being able to talk to them as adults, and it's really great. And I raised them in LA, and they still turned out great.
That is an enormous upset, regardless of who you are. So, congratulations on that.
Thank you. And where do you live?
I live in Austin, Texas. Have you spent any time in Austin?
I have. I went to the Bob Bullock Museum,
That's right.
and they had a big Davy Crockett exhibit there. And I contributed a bunch of stuff. I have a big Davy Crockett collection, which I
It,
just donated to the Alamo Museum.
that's exactly right. I was going to ask you about that earlier this month. It got a really nice write up in the San Antonio Express News. What was the impetus for you deciding to donate some Davy Crockett items to a an area that has obviously become synonymous with Davy Crockett, even though he only spent a limited amount of time in Texas?
That's right. But I have a wonderful letter written by Davy Crockett in 1835 saying, tomorrow I leave for Texas.
Literally the last correspondence he sent anybody.
Yes, this is the last letter he sent anybody that is still in existence.
When did you
And
first
so what?
go ahead?
I first got interested in the whole Crockett thing, after seeing the Walt Disney, the Walt Disney series in the 50s. And it was and that made such a big impression on me, as it did a lot of kids, a lot of boys in my generation. And I have a picture of myself with my brother in our Davy Crockett suits with plastic fringe. This is in Milwaukee. So I started collecting. So I had four letters. I had posters for plays written, all this valuable stuff. And I had, I was running out of wall space here. And my kids are not interested in it. As I said, they're wonderful, but they're not interested in Davy Crockett, especially. And so, and meanwhile, I didn't want to sell it all. I sold some of it, but then in the last 2 or 3 years, they've started this amazing building program in San Antonio, a real museums and a collection center and a huge. This is a world-class destination place now, and so I was so impressed. So I said, "Well, I'll donate it, and I can write it off." And it was just, and there's such nice people there, and they recently blew me out there and to kind of dedicate the collection, and I did a Q&A, and they did a dinner for me, and it was fun. Met a lot of nice people, who also people who I had met before, because I've been going to San Antonio for 20 years.
Yeah, the Alamo is such a fascinating place in San Antonio, especially as the downtown area has built up around it. It's very unassuming. And yes, they're doing more to make it more than just a gift shop and the little chapel area, but you assume with what that particular building means to the history of the state of Texas, that it would be massive, that it would be several stories tall and a couple of
Yeah,
blocks wide. No, it is has a very small footprint, even with the
but
expansion.
right, but what they've done is it's very, very smart. Uh, in front of the Alamo, they used to have a street running. There were buses, cars, and now they've closed that all off and pretty much have approximated between the post office on the north and the Crockett block and the Woolworth building on the west. And they built this kind of approximation of the south entrance to the Alamo Plaza. So you get an idea of where this was, how big the fort was, and also how impossible it was to defend with 200 guys. It was a huge area. So this was a time they really should have taken Sam Houston's advice and abandoned the whole thing right away. But
So while your collection has more to do with Davy Crockett, you were one of a couple of notable people who have a fascination with either the Alamo or something surrounding the Alamo. The other is Phil Collins, who has donated quite a bit to the Alamo Museum over the years. Have you and Phil Collins ever traded notes on some of the paraphernalia that you guys have collected over time?
no, I refuse to speak to him.
Why
No,
is
I'm
that?
just no. We've just never gotten together, and I don't really try, and I don't know where he lives. But we do have this. Someday we should meet because we have a lot in common. Uh, I used to be able to play the drums, stuff like that.
Is there any Davy Crockett paraphernalia that you have still kept with you, even though you've donated a bunch of it?
I've kept. I have a few things like I have a few books. I have these two Davy Crockett cookie jars, but nothing important. But back in like the early 90s, I commissioned an artist to make a painting of Crockett as a young man, and nothing existed like that. We just have portraits done of him when he was a congressman and when he was already in his early or mid 40s. So, but I did Crockett as a young man, and that a copy of that hangs in the Crockett Hotel, which the
Wow.
state has also bought. They bought the Menger. I mean, it's amazing what they've done. And so I donated the original painting and the head study to the museum. So all that will be as a part of the Alamo Museum collection.
Well, to hear that sort of creativity out of you, David, is not at all surprising. Just going back and looking at what you have done individually and what you and your brother Jerry and Jim Abrahams have done over time is nothing short of remarkable in terms of all the entertainment and laughs that you provided people over the years. I, for one, am incredibly indebted because I feel like I've learned a lot of lessons on how to make people laugh from you guys. I didn't even realize this, and going back through your credits, the very first thing you guys did in Hollywood was something that was kind of a lost footage sort of tape that my generation was trying to get a hold of in the 80s and 90s. And that would be Kentucky Fried Movie,
Yeah,
which is
Kentucky
the
Fried Movie.
bit
I
of an
mean,
offshoot of you guys getting your theatrical, your comedic start at the Kentucky Fried Theater in Wisconsin. Prior to that, how did the Kentucky Fried Movie come to be? Because man, that was something that was like on par with finding a Playboy magazine back when we were kids. If you could get a copy of the Kentucky Fried Movie.
right. Well, we started out with a small theater. It was a 70-seat theater in the back of a bookstore in Madison, Wisconsin, just off the UW campus. And then we did that for a year, and it was just we didn't do any advertising. Word of mouth just spread. No one had ever seen anything like it. So we figured, we should go either to New York or LA, and decided to go to LA because it would be more comfortable to starve in the warm weather. So we loaded up a U-Haul truck and, took everything, remodeled an old warehouse that had been abandoned, and we made that into Kentucky Fried Theater on Pico Boulevard in West LA. And we ran that for 5 years. And but at a certain point, well, we started in 72 in LA. And then in 74, we had the idea of, we should start to write a movie because we don't want to be, doing stage stuff at age 50. So, eking out a living, however that is. So, we wrote Airplane in 1975, having seen this movie called Zero Hour. And that was the real breakthrough, but we couldn't get it financed because, like, who are we? We're just these three kids from Wisconsin. So John Landis came to see the show and he said, why don't you guys, I love your show. Why don't you do a movie of your show? And so that's how Kentucky Fried Movie was started. And we put $25,000 of our own money into doing 10 minutes of it. And that's what convinced the United Artists Theater Circuit. These were exhibitors, and they played it in their theaters for audiences, and the audiences laughed. So they said, okay, these guys have something. Let's go for the whole budget, which was only 700,000. So, and then we did that, and the thing made 12 million. So it was hugely profitable for the exhibitors, for the investors.
Was there a point where you guys realized that the movie had reached a sort of cult status a decade later?
I don't realize much, but because I'm kind of I'm in the forest, so I don't see
Yeah.
I don't see the whole thing. But I get so much feedback from around. I mean, I'm aware of how popular basketball is and Top Secret, and in addition to the movies that were the big hits like Airplane and The Naked Guns and the scary movies. So I became aware, everybody always mentions Kentucky Fried Movie, basketball, yeah, all that stuff. So I kind of I have been aware of it. Yes.
Okay, well, that's good. I'm glad to hear that basketball is getting its proper due now, too, because I feel like in the moment when that movie came out in theaters, and look, it's Trey Parker, Matt Stone, you're a part of
Yeah.
this as well. Like, there's no reason why that shouldn't have been one of the biggest films of the year, that particular year. For whatever reason, I don't know how well it did in the theaters, but it definitely, and I think I would have been in college at this time, it definitely had staying power in college circles where people truly appreciated it. And you guys were kind of ahead of your time in terms of mocking where sports were headed. And all these years later, you've received nothing but validation for
Yeah,
some of the
I know.
criticisms that you had of professional sports.
And yeah, Top Secret and basketball just rank up there with anything that was our biggest hits. And well, I always say, uh, but it was ahead of its time. So I always say, I never had any flops. I just had movies that were ahead of their time.
That's right. Uh, well ahead of their time, decades ahead of their time in some cases. Well, Airplane certainly is not. It was perfectly fit for its time. It was a modest budget, and you guys just completely killed it. You convinced a bunch of serious actors to take roles as the straight people in a film that was very silly, and in the process, you made one of the greatest comedies of all time. And
I,
how just profound is it on society and on culture? Well, I only know Leslie Nielsen as a funny actor. I had no clue
yeah,
about him as a serious actor until a few years ago when it's like, no, he was actually a serious actor and he was worried about getting typecast in grandfather roles for the rest of his career, but he gets this second life as a result of you guys. And he's really just the tip of the iceberg of some of the great actors that you cast in Airplane to go along with some funny actors as well. I mean, Peter Graves is on the serious side. I mean, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar probably doesn't get enough mention in terms of guys who had a very serious demeanor that you found a way to make very funny. And in a lot of ways, I think you helped people who are trying to make comedies realize just how important the straight person was in something that's funny being received as funny as well. Was there a moment in your comedic life where you came to better understand the importance of a straight person in a comedic bit?
well, it's like when we were in college, and maybe a little before that, that Jim and Jerry and I used to get together and watch dead serious movies, and we would pretend we would dub in the voices, and we would laugh or put in lines that we'd like to have seen, and
So you
that
guys were doing Mystery Science Theater 3000 decades before that ever came out then.
right. we were doing it, and we were absolutely into that, and so that's what we thought was funny. We didn't think, of course, we thought Mel Brooks was funny, and Woody Allen movies at the time were funny, but we we just thought serious movies were funnier, and so we would redub those things, and that's how. And then when we discovered this movie Zero Hour, I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's a 1957 movie with Dana Andrews and Sterling Hayden, and these are tough guys and very serious. And it was the same plot: food poisoning on an airliner, and a guy with PTSD has to fly it down. So we kind of copied that, and you can still go on YouTube and type in Airplane Zero Hour, and they'll show scene for scene how we copied the plot of Zero Hour. We put in the jokes.
Because Zero Hour also had a scene where a woman was hysterical on the flight and somebody had
Yeah,
to slap her, right? And then you guys just
right.
expanded that.
We expanded it. We just, exaggerated it because when we were in like grade school and middle school, we used to read Mad Magazine. And Mad Magazine, if you've ever read that, they had this feature called Scenes We'd Like to See. And so they would start out with a serious scene in a famous movie, and then they would add their twist to it. So, in a way, that was kind of a textbook. And so I'm trying to teach this stuff now. We have a course called mastercrash.com, and it's actually a free community, and you can get more involved, and there's other things you can pay for, but uh, I mainly was kind of shocked at the fact that Paramount did Naked Gun 4 without me. I had written a script and they went with someone else. It was a very poor decision, I thought. And then people did it thinking that they knew how to do spoof, thinking that it was easy. They didn't know the rules. Jerry and Jim and I always had these 15 rules. And so I'm teaching this in the course.
What's the most surprising of those 15 rules for people who may not be familiar with them?
Well, probably the 15th rule. There are no rules. But but
Well done.
but that just concerns jokes. I'm also teaching, the most important thing in a movie, whether it be a comedy, serious, is that some character has to have an emotional, intrinsic problem in the first act that is solved by the end of the movie. So, and that's so important. And when I've done that in the movie, it's been successful. And when I haven't, it was less successful. But so many people think, well, you just throw a bunch of jokes at people and they're going to they'll have a good time. But when they leave the theater or when they finish, it just, they won't think that they've seen something really good.
Because with that emotional connection, even if it's a comedy, you still need your audience to care from the jump.
Exactly. They have to care about the characters.
What is an
So
example? What is
what?
an example of a film where you didn't establish that emotional connection and the film fell flat as a result?
Oh, Top Secret.
Hmm.
Top Secret, funniest movie we ever made. But
Great flick, and that was
we
that was Val Kilmer's first film too,
Val
wasn't it?
Kilmer, and
Yeah.
but we didn't, we didn't give him a character to start with a problem that he would solve in the third act. So it had a good plot, but it didn't have that character arc.
Interesting. So while the studio did believe in you guys enough to greenlight Airplane, they were providing notes throughout and even had some suggestions for casting. Like they wanted to go with Dom DeLuise and what eventually went to Leslie Nielsen, which I guess that's just the result. Look, like people can watch Airplane 45 years later and say, well, of course this movie worked because of this, and this. But you guys kind of had to prove yourselves in that moment. And I think a great example of that is them wanting to go with somebody who had a sillier reputation like Dom DeLuise versus Leslie Nielsen because the studio was having a hard time understanding how all these serious people could make a funny movie. But that's where you guys just had to stick with your guns and recognize, even if you couldn't maybe say it out loud as much as you might want to, that you have to trust your comedic instincts more than the people who are essentially financing the film. And they certainly get a say so, but that doesn't necessarily mean they know what is going to be funny at the end of the day.
Right. Well, But in this case, it wasn't quite that black and white. Uh, this studio at the time was Michael Eisner, Jeff Katzenberg, Barry Diller,
Oh my
Frank
God.
Mancuso. This is an all-star team, and these were smart guys, and they had a lot of confidence in us, and they did believe in that in us. But I think the about the casting, they didn't oppose Leslie Nielsen and Peter Graves and Lloyd Bridges and Robert Stack. They were fine with that. What they wanted to do, and it was in their defense, it was only because they really believed in the movie and they wanted it to be a success. And I think they would have liked us to have cast Bill Murray or Chevy Chase at the time. Those were the reigning comedians. And then, or a star at one point, Barry Manilow was suggested, but they always respected us and we had Howard Koch as our executive producer. So uh, and they took us through a rewrite. They assigned one of their Paramount people to help us rewrite the script to make that character arc better and
Mm.
make the story better. They're so smart. I mean, the contrast between the Paramount then of 1980 and the Paramount now, which are is run by hacks who, they're just they don't hold a candle to these guys. But Paramount always had faith in us. I mean, not initially, they didn't want us to direct it, but finally they relented. They let us direct it. We were first time director. There were three of us. And so that was a crazy decision. And, to their credit, they said yes. And they said with the provisor that they would put their own past former head of the studio, Howard W. Koch, on our set to watch over things as the Godfather. And the other clause in our contract was they could fire us after 2 weeks. And we said, fine, we'll take that. And so the first day shooting was Shirley, you can't be serious. And Leslie says, I am serious, and don't call me Shirley. And this was a revelation. And everybody, came from all over the lot to see, this crazy movie and see what we were doing. Because then, it had spread all over the place that as our first day directing, we were making Leslie Nielsen funny. Didn't seem very possible. But from that day on, our dailies were crowded. They had to add a second room, a second screening room, because everybody from all over the lot couldn't wait to see what was going on in the airplane set.
Well, that just lets you guys know that you're clearly doing something right. I mean, it's so rare to hear about two people directing a film, much less three. How challenging was that for you guys? Or was it a matter of you not having done it before, so you didn't know any better?
No, no, we thought as one. Well, it was part of our knowing that we hadn't done it before. And remember, we're from Milwaukee. We're just Midwestern guys. We didn't want to come off as like we knew everything. We absolutely knew what we wanted, but we weren't afraid to ask uh, crew members, what is this? What does a grip do? Which end of the camera is the lens on? Stuff like this. And they were always they were very happy to be there with us and help us. And of course, as I said, we had Howard Koch helping us, and the studio was behind it. It was that experience was wonderful, and partially because that whole airplane thing. I've said before, you can only come from nowhere once. And that was it.
It's very well said there.
But we tell the
So,
story in it. We tell the story in our book called "Surely You Can't Be Serious: The True Story of Airplane," which is out on St. Martin's Press, and it's been selling quite well. And it's a great Christmas gift too, if anybody wants, because the movie has so many fans. But it's not just about what happened on the set; it's the whole story of how we got to make a movie from just this small 70-seat theater in Madison.
yeah, well, I mean, look, it's I haven't read the book just yet, but I can imagine that it is a great one considering what it covers and the background it gets into. But I'm also fascinated to check out your other book, David, Before the Invention of Smiling, The Incredible Journey of the Zucker Family from Horse and Buggy to Indoor Plumbing. I'm actually Armenian, even though you probably can't tell it. You can only tell it by my nose and my desire to donate my kids to a traveling circus every other week.
That was a giveaway. Yeah.
My family also has something very similar where they had to escape the lands that they were in the early 1900s and came to
Oh,
America as the land of opportunity. So I love to read the synopsis for this book. Just how enjoyable was it for you? Because I also interviewed my then 93-year-old grandfather literally a year before he died just to get the family story down on recorder. You did the same with your grandmother, and you actually went back and went through that interview decades later to
decades
write this
later.
book. Just what was that process like for you? It's obviously emotional. You're infusing humor throughout as well. Just how fulfilling was it to get to write that particular book?
Yeah, I had grown up listening to my grandmother's story, how she literally escaped over the border, walking, 15, 16, 17 miles over the mountains, in from Hungary into Poland. And the whole train journey, they traveled in covered wagon and a train the ship and Ellis Island and the train. It was a long journey, and I'm so glad I got it down because I think it's a wonderful story, and there's pictures with it too. But so many things weren't photographed that I had an artist draw drawings of what this would have looked like. So that's what it makes the book fairly unique. And I worked on this book for off and on for 20 years, and
Wow.
then finally finished it. I'm still going back and like I'm going to the houses in Milwaukee where my grandmother and grandfather lived, and my dad grew up, and I have old pictures of my dad as a 1 year old on the porch of one of these houses. I went back, took a picture of myself on the porch. It still exists today. And I want to go back and go inside because some of the pictures were taken inside some of the houses. So I want to get those because I keep updating the editions.
So wait a second. Does that mean we may get a sequel to Before the Invention of Smiling when it's all said and done?
It's not a sequel. It's just, I just keep adding stuff to it and I'm mainly doing my dad's side of the family. I'm going to do a little bit more of my mom's, and because I have pictures of that, it's just like always pictures of my mom. My mom, she grew up in the on the Lower East Side of New York in the tenements,
Hmm.
and she had to escape. Well, well, she took a train to Madison, Wisconsin, where she went to graduate school. That's where she met my dad, who grew up in Milwaukee.
Wow. All right, last thing now, David. We barely scratched the surface of your illustrious career, but alas, we're out of time. As somebody who has gotten to laugh a lot at all the great work that you've come up with over the years, what do you love about getting to make people laugh for a living?
Well, I get to do, I just really love to laugh myself. And then if I can, it's always a challenge. I mean, doing a movie, it's a tough thing. And I just, to me, it's art and, I can do it. And I love to sit in the back of the theater and listen to the audience laugh. That's all. And I don't have to act on stage. And I also love to do Q&As after the movies play. So I've done screenings of all these movies. I'm going to do a bunch of Texas dates, probably with Bob Hayes. And we just got back from Seattle and Denver, and they're sold out houses. They play the movie in these old theaters. And so we're going to do Austin, Houston, Dallas, and San Antonio, early 26.
Yeah, I was going to ask if you had any dates in mind because I would love to catch up prior to your appearance here in town to help promote that show or help
Yeah,
promote those shows all throughout the state because I imagined it's going to be more packed houses here as well to celebrate the 45th anniversary of one of the all-time great
that's
comedies.
right. We're going to do it. And so I'm looking forward to that because I've been to Texas, been to every city, including Lubbock, because that's where I bought my Davy Crockett letter from a doctor who lived in Lubbock who had a whole Crockett collection. I bought his whole collection.
Well, I hope the smell of the slaughterhouses was worth the purchase of that letter out in Lubbock, David.
I had no idea there were slaughterhouses in Lubbock.
The wind must have been blowing the right direction that day then because you didn't have
I
to
think it
smell it.
was. And I went to see the empty lot where Buddy Holly's house was.
Oh, is that right? Very, yep.
Yeah,
That's what Lubbock is known for sure. That Texas Tech, and I guess the occasional Davy Crockett artifact.
that's right, which I took advantage of. Yes.
Well, David, thank you so much for the time. This has been a real honor and pleasure. I'm going to encourage people to check out Master Crash, a crash course in spoof comedy. That's available online now. You are also on Instagram as well, so people can find the link through your Instagram. What is your Instagram handle, David?
At the David Zucker.
At the David Zucker. And you can also check out his book, Surely You Can't Be Serious, The True Story of Airplane and Before the Invention of Smiling, the incredible journey of the Zucker family from horse and buggy to indoor plumbing. David, again, honor and pleasure. Thank you so much for the time today. I hope we can catch up again before your trip to Texas to celebrate Airplane here in a couple of
Yeah,
months.
let's do it. I'm looking forward to it.